They called her the Phantom of Helmand Province. Commander Garrett Ashford heard the name standing in the operations center of Forward Operating Base Sentinel as the Taliban noose tightened around them. Another ghost story, he thought. Another legend soldiers whispered during night watches to keep fear at bay. One woman, one rifle, no confirmed identity, just rumors that traveled between forward bases like smoke. Then the Eastern machine gun fell silent. A Soviet-era DSHK heavy gun that had been hammering their perimeter for 3 days just stopped. No warning, no malfunction, just silence where there had been thunder. Ashford grabbed his binoculars and scanned the ridge 1,200 meters out. Through the morning haze, he could see the gun position. Still, empty. The crew scattered like they'd seen a ghost. 60 seconds later, the mortar pit went dark, and Commander Garrett Ashford stopped laughing about ghost stories because legends don't walk through Taliban kill zones in the mountains of Afghanistan. But someone did. Someone just eliminated 2 of their most dangerous threats with shots that shouldn't have been possible. And she was standing at his north gate, asking for entry. The compound sat in the Kunar Province Valley like a wounded animal waiting for the end. Forward Operating Base Sentinel had been cut off for 72 hours. No resupply, no reinforcements, no hope visible on any horizon. Commander Garrett Ashford stood in the operations center watching red markers multiply on the tactical display like a spreading infection. Each marker represented an enemy position, each one a gun pointed at his people. 97 American soldiers trapped in a box canyon with their backs against the mountains and Taliban insurgents closing from 3 sides. The mathematics were simple and brutal. They were outnumbered 3-1. Ammunition down to 35%, water rationed to 40% capacity, medical supplies critical. Ashford was 58 years old. He'd spent 34 years in uniform, 2 tours in Bosnia, 3 in Iraq, now his 2nd deployment to Afghanistan. He'd learned to recognize when odds shifted from difficult to catastrophic. This was that moment. "Sir," Lieutenant Owen Kincaid entered, rain dripping from his helmet. His face carried the exhaustion of 3 days without real sleep. "QRF, status update from battalion." Ashford didn't turn from the display. "Tell me something good, Owen." "Relief convoy hit another sandstorm. They're grounded until visibility improves. Estimate 6 hours minimum before they can roll." 6 hours. Ashford felt the weight of 97 lives pressing down on his shoulders like physical mass. 97 soldiers who trusted him to keep them breathing, to get them home to families and futures, and all the small moments that made life worth protecting. The radio crackled with static, then a voice from the perimeter. "Command, this is North Gate. We have a situation." Ashford grabbed the handset. "Define situation." "Single individual approaching on foot, came through the eastern sector. No vehicle, no escort, just walk through the Taliban lines like they weren't there." Ashford exchanged glances with Kincaid. In 72 hours of siege, nothing had come through those lines except mortar fire and bullets. Now someone was walking through on foot. "Is it one of ours? Someone from the QRF?" "Negative, sir. Civilian clothes over what looks like a plate carrier. Carrying a rifle case. No unit markings. She's asking to speak with the commander." She. Ashford felt something cold settle in his chest. "Detain and search. I'm on my way." He found her 10 minutes later in the entry control point, standing with the calm patience of someone who had nowhere else to be. Mid-30s maybe, dark hair pulled back, eyes that tracked everything without seeming to move. She wore hiking boots, cargo pants, and a weather-beaten jacket that had seen years of hard use. The rifle case at her feet was battered but well-maintained. Master Sergeant Clayton Voss stood nearby, his hand never far from his sidearm. Voss was 57, 2 weeks from retirement, and he'd been in combat long enough to recognize when something didn't fit the normal patterns of war. "Commander Ashford," the woman's voice was quiet but carried clearly. "I'm Bryn Calloway, Colonel Thaddeus Whitmore sent me. Ashford felt his world tilt slightly. Whitmore. He hadn't heard that name in years. Colonel Thaddeus Whitmore had been his instructor at Fort Benning in 1994. The old man had taught him everything that mattered about combat leadership, about making impossible decisions, about living with the weight of those decisions afterward. Whitmore's retired, Ashford said carefully, has been for almost a decade. Yes, sir. He's at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany, stage 4 lung cancer. He has about 4 weeks left, maybe less. She said it without emotion, just facts laid out clean. He's been monitoring your situation via satellite feed. He sent me because he knew you'd need help that wasn't coming through official channels. Ashford studied her face, looking for deception or delusion. He found neither. And what exactly does Colonel Whitmore think you can do about 300 Taliban fighters surrounding this base? 3 rounds, sir. That's all I'll need. The operations center fell silent. Voss shifted his weight, his hand moving closer to his weapon. Kincaid stopped mid-motion with a coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Ashford's skepticism crystallized into disbelief. 3 bullets against 300 fighters. The arithmetic didn't work. You're asking me to bet 97 lives on 3 rounds. 3 rounds, yes, sir. Precision application at extended range. Target their command structure. Break their coordination. Give your QRF time to reach you. This is insane. Ashford heard his own voice getting louder. Do you understand basic military operations? They have multiple command posts, redundant communications, backup leaders. Taking out 1 or 2 targets won't. I won't be taking out 1 or 2 targets. Bryn reached into her jacket and pulled out a small, weatherproof notebook. She flipped it open and set it on the tactical table. Their senior commander operates from the Western Ridge. Nasir Ahmadi, age 67, former Mujahideen fighter. He uses a 7-antenna communication array, not 6. That's how you identify his position. She pointed to locations on the map with mechanical precision. Their mortar spotter positions himself near the Eastern Battery. Younger, maybe mid-30s. He's the one coordinating their indirect fire. And their field commander runs tactical adjustments from the central observation point. He's the one who'll try to salvage any assault if the others go down. Ashford stared at the map, then at her. How could you possibly know their command structure? You just arrived. I've been watching for 11 hours, sir. Since 0300. Radio pattern analysis, movement protocols, light discipline failures. They're following modified Soviet doctrine. Colonel Whitmore trained with the Mujahideen in the 80s. He knows how Ahmadi thinks. He briefed me on what to look for. The name hit Ashford like a physical blow. Ahmadi. He'd heard Whitmore mention that name years ago. Late-night conversations at Benning when the old colonel had too much whiskey and not enough reasons to keep certain memories buried. Ahmadi had been Whitmore's counterpart during the Soviet occupation. They'd fought together, shared blood in battle, and the strange brotherhood that forms when men face death as allies. Whitmore knows Ahmadi is here? Yes, sir. That's why he sent me specifically. Bryn's face remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. The colonel wants this circle closed. He can't do it himself anymore, so he's doing it through me. Ashford looked at Voss, who shrugged with the universal gesture of soldiers who'd seen too much to dismiss anything outright. Then he looked back at Bryn Calloway, this woman who'd walked through a Taliban siege like it was a morning stroll. Even if you're right about their positions, Sergeant Dalton Reeves spoke up from the corner, we're talking about extreme range shots, 200 meters minimum, in wind, in thermals, against moving targets. Correct. Bryn's tone didn't change. That's difficult, but there's a difference between difficult and impossible. Ashford felt the operations center watching him, waiting for him to make the call. He could refuse, could tell this woman to get on the next outbound convoy and let professionals handle the situation. But they'd been handling the situation for 72 hours, and the only thing that had changed was the shrinking perimeter and the rising casualty count. You're serious. You actually believe you can make those shots? I don't believe, Commander. I know. Colonel Whitmore trained me for 6 years. Every weekend from 2002 to 2008, he taught me everything he learned in 4 decades of combat. He made me into something specific, something he knew would be needed when he wasn't around anymore. She met his eyes directly. I've done this before, multiple times. Different bases, different sieges, always the same outcome. When everyone else operates on fear and adrenaline, I operate on precision and calculation. Ashford felt a ghost of memory. Whitmore saying something similar during a night fire exercise at Benning. Numbers don't panic. What do you need? The question came out before Ashford fully decided to ask it. North Ridge Observation Post, 800 meters from your perimeter. I need it cleared of personnel. No one within 200 meters of my position, and I'll need specialty ammunition. M33 ball, .50 BMG, 3 rounds. That position is completely exposed, Kincaid said. No cover, no fallback point. You'll be visible to every Taliban fighter on that ridgeline. Yes, sir, that's part of the design. They'll see me. They'll focus resources on eliminating me. While they're trying to kill me, they won't be organizing an assault on your base. She said it like she was describing weather patterns, not her own death. As long as I'm drawing their attention, you're safer. Ashford wanted to argue, wanted to find the flaw in her logic, but 34 years in uniform had taught him to recognize certain truths. Sometimes salvation came from unexpected directions. Sometimes you had to trust people who walked through impossible circumstances and offered impossible solutions. Master Sergeant Voss, get her the ammunition, special loads, extended range, whatever the armorer recommends. Ashford turned back to Bryn. But I want radio contact every 30 minutes. Real reports with details. If you're just getting lucky up there, I'll know. You won't hear from me once I'm in position, sir. Radio discipline. Taliban monitors frequencies. Any transmission from that ridge gives them exact coordinates. You'll know I'm working when their command structure starts failing. Ashford felt control slipping. He was about to put his entire garrison's survival in the hands of a woman he'd met 10 minutes ago. A woman with no visible rank, no unit designation, nothing but a rifle case and a claim that a dying colonel had sent her. But he'd also watched 2 of their biggest threats go silent right before she arrived. One question, Ashford said. Why would Whitmore send you specifically? Why not a scout sniper team? Why not official channels? Bryn was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried something that hadn't been there before. Not quite emotion, but the shadow of it. Because official channels wouldn't authorize what needs to happen here. And because 3 years ago, I made a mistake that cost 17 innocent people their lives. The colonel's been helping me pay that debt ever since. This is part of the payment. She picked up her rifle case and turned toward the door. I'll be in position by 0400. When the sun comes up and the thermals settle, I'll start working. 3 rounds, 3 targets. That's what Colonel Whitmore ordered. That's what I'll deliver. Ashford watched her walk out into the pre-dawn darkness. Voss appeared at his elbow. Sir, we're really doing this? Trusting our entire defense to one woman with a rifle? No. Ashford kept his eyes on the door Bryn had disappeared through. We're trusting Colonel Whitmore's judgment. He trained me. He trained her. If he says she can do this, then she can do this. He turned back to the tactical display, looking at the red markers that represented their death. And if she can't, we're exactly where we were 10 minutes ago. Surrounded, outgunned, and out of time. Private Sloan Barrett had been at Forward Operating Base Sentinel for 11 months. She'd survived 4 Taliban attacks, 2 IED scares, and 1 miserable week when the water purification system failed, and everyone learned what real thirst felt like. But she'd never seen anyone like the woman who climbed under the North Ridge as dawn approached. Sloan had drawn perimeter duty, which meant walking the compound walls every 2 hours, checking for breaches. Terrible assignment during a siege, but someone had to do it. That's when she'd climbed the ladder to the roof observation post and found her. Bryn Calloway sat absolutely motionless behind a rifle that looked like it had seen a decade of war. Her position was perfect, tucked against a sandbag wall that provided cover from 3 sides while leaving clear sight lines to the east, west, and north. Her face was partially hidden by a tan shemagh, but her eyes never moved from the scope. "Ma'am," Sloane kept her voice quiet, not wanting to startle someone with a loaded weapon. No response. The woman might have been carved from stone. Sloane tried again. "Ma'am, Commander Ashford sent word that you were up here." "How long has the Eastern machine gun been firing?" Bryn's voice came without her eye leaving the scope or her body shifting position. The question caught Sloane off guard. "The DSHK on Ridge 7? Since yesterday morning, ma'am. It's been tearing up our supply depot." "Not anymore." Sloane moved to the edge of the roof and raised her binoculars. Through the growing light of dawn, she could see Ridge 7, where the Soviet-era heavy machine gun had been positioned. She'd been watching that gun kill their compound for 3 days, watching its muzzle flash, watching the tracers arc across the valley, watching her friends dive for cover every time it opened up. Now she saw nothing. No movement, no gun crew. The position looked abandoned. "What happened to them?" "I happened to them." Bryn adjusted her scope with minute movements. 1243 meters, crosswind compensation 4.2 mils left. Soviet heavy gunner always exposes his right shoulder during belt feed reload. They haven't updated their training doctrine since 1973. Sloane stared at the woman, trying to process what she was hearing. "You shot someone at 1200 meters? 1243, precision matters." Bryn's finger rested along the trigger guard, not on the trigger itself. Professional discipline that spoke to thousands of hours of training. "The colonel taught me that distance is just variables. Wind, altitude, temperature, barometric pressure. Get the calculation right and the bullet goes where you tell it." "The colonel?" "Whitmore, Colonel Thaddeus Whitmore. He trained me for 6 years, taught me everything that matters about protecting people." Sloane noticed the rifle for the first time. Custom work, Accuracy International chassis system. The scope looked like it cost more than her truck back home, but what caught her attention was the engraving on the receiver. Simple letters cut deep into the metal. TW to BC, guard the watch. "You're really her." Sloane heard the awe in her own voice. "The stories we hear, the phantom sniper who shows up at forward bases when things go bad. That's you." Stories are what soldiers tell in the dark to feel less alone. Bryn's eye never left the scope. "I'm just someone who learned a specific skill set and uses it where needed." "But the stories say you've saved hundreds of people, multiple bases, always appearing right when—" "Private," Bryn's voice cut through the morning air. "I need you to do something for me. Go to your quartermaster. Tell him I need 3 rounds. Specialty ammunition for hard targets at extended range." He'll know what I mean. "And tell Commander Ashford that the Eastern machine gun was targeting his medical facility. They had the range calculated. Next volley would have hit your wounded." Sloane felt ice water run down her spine. The medical tent where Doc Sullivan was treating 7 injured soldiers. Where her friend Corporal Reed was recovering from shrapnel wounds. Where people were too hurt to run if fire came in. "How did you know they were targeting medical?" "I've been watching for 11 hours. Taliban mortar teams adjust fire every 23 minutes. They walk rounds in a grid pattern until they find concentrations of activity. Your medical tent had the highest foot traffic. It was the logical next target." Bryn shifted slightly, her breathing slow and controlled. "I stopped them. That's what I'm here to do. Stop them from killing people who have families waiting. Now go get me those 3 rounds so I can finish the job." Sloane descended the ladder with her mind spinning. Below, the compound was starting to wake. Soldiers moving to defensive positions. The smell of breakfast MREs being heated, the sound of weapons being checked and rechecked. All the small rituals of men preparing for battle. She found Master Sergeant Voss in the armory, already pulling specialty ammunition from a locked safe. The old sergeant had been in uniform longer than Sloane had been alive. He moved with the economy of motion that came from decades of repetition. She sent you for the rounds, not a question. Yes, Sergeant, she said 3, for hard targets. Voss set 3 large brass cartridges on the counter. .50 BMG, boat-tailed hollow points designed to maintain supersonic velocity past 1,500 meters. Each round cost more than a week of Sloane's pay. Sergeant, is she really who they say? The Phantom from Helmand? Voss looked at her with eyes that had seen too many wars. Private, I've been doing this since Desert Storm, 91. I've seen things that shouldn't be possible. I've watched soldiers do things that physics says can't be done. And I've learned that sometimes the universe puts certain people in certain places at certain times. People who can do what needs doing when everyone else has run out of options. He handed her the ammunition. That woman up there walked through 300 Taliban fighters like they were morning fog. Then she eliminated 2 of our biggest threats before the sun even came up. So yes, I think she's exactly who they say, and I think we're all going to be alive tomorrow because of her. Sloane carried the 3 rounds back to the roof like they were religious artifacts. She found Bryn in the exact same position, frozen in place, eye pressed to scope. Your ammunition, ma'am. Set them down within arm's reach. Then I need you to leave. Get at least 200 meters from this position. When I start firing, Taliban will concentrate everything they have on this ridge. Anyone near me becomes collateral damage. Sloane set the rounds down carefully. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Quickly. Why do you do this? You don't wear rank. No unit patch. You could be anywhere else. Why walk into sieges? Bryn was quiet for so long that Sloane thought she wouldn't answer. Then, without moving from her shooting position, she spoke. 3 years ago, I killed 17 innocent people. Wrong target, wrong timing, wrong decision. I've been trying to balance that equation ever since. That's not your fault. Bad intelligence happens in war. It was my trigger, my responsibility. The colonel taught me that. He said if you're going to be a sniper, you carry every death, the righteous ones and the mistakes. You don't get to choose what you remember. Sloane felt the burden in those words. 17 lives, 17 faces this woman probably saw every time she closed her eyes. How many have you saved? I stopped counting after 80, but it doesn't matter. The weight doesn't lighten with arithmetic, Private. It just gives you something to do while you're remembering. Bryn's hand moved to the first round, loading it with practiced efficiency. Now go, get to safety. If I've calculated correctly, things are about to get very loud up here. Sloane climbed down and ran across the compound. She found Commander Ashford in the operations center, looking at the tactical display with Lieutenant Kincaid. Sir, Calloway is in position. She has her ammunition. She told me to tell you the eastern gun was targeting medical. She said next volley would have hit our wounded. Ashford looked at Kincaid, who pulled up trajectory analysis. The computer model showed probable target zones based on observed mortar patterns. The medical tent sat dead center in the highest probability zone. She knew that from watching? Kincaid's voice carried disbelief. She calculated their next target from pattern analysis? She said she's been watching for 11 hours, sir. Said they adjust fire every 23 minutes in grid patterns. Ashford pulled up the fire mission logs. Sure enough, incoming mortar rounds had landed in a precise grid, walking closer to high-activity areas. The next logical target was medical. Would have been medical, except Bryn Calloway had eliminated the gun crew before they could fire. Sir, Kincaid pointed at the display, if she's right about the patterns, that means she didn't just take out a machine gun, she prevented a massacre. Ashford sat down heavily. He thought about the 7 wounded soldiers in that tent, thought about Corporal Reed, who'd been hit by shrapnel 2 days ago. Thought about Doc Sullivan, who'd been working 36 hours straight trying to keep people alive. All of them would have died in the next mortar volley. Would have died if one woman with a rifle hadn't been watching, hadn't been calculating, hadn't pulled a trigger at 1,200 meters and changed their survival odds. "Sir," Voss entered the operations center. "You need to see this." He pointed out the window toward the North Ridge. Through his binoculars, Ashford could see Bryn Calloway's position, could see the morning sun illuminating her silhouette against the skyline, and he could see every Taliban fighter on 3 ridges reorienting their weapons toward that single position. She'd made herself a target, drew every gun in the valley toward her location. While they focused on killing her, they weren't organizing assaults, weren't coordinating attacks, weren't doing anything except trying to eliminate one woman who'd walked into their siege and started destroying their command structure. "She's bait," Ashford said quietly. "She positioned herself where they can see her, where they have to respond. She's turning herself into the biggest threat on the battlefield, so we're not the biggest threat anymore." "That's suicide, sir." "No." Ashford kept his binoculars trained on that distant figure. "That's what happens when someone decides 97 lives matter more than one. That's what protection looks like when you strip away everything except the choice." The first shot came at 0437. The sound rolled across the valley like distant thunder. Not loud where Ashford stood, but absolutely distinct. The crack of a .50 caliber rifle firing at extended range. A sound that carried weight and intention, and the promise of violence delivered with mathematical precision. 30 seconds later, enemy radio traffic exploded into chaos. Taliban communications lit up with urgent transmissions. Ashford's translator, a civilian contractor named Stevens, listened with growing disbelief. "They're saying their communications officer is down. Western Ridge. They're calling for medics. They're asking what happened." Ashford grabbed his binoculars and focused on the Western Ridge, where intelligence had identified an enemy command post. Through the morning haze, he could see figures running, could see the organized defensive position dissolving into confusion. "Range to that position?" Kincaid checked the rangefinder. 1,207 meters, sir. 1,207 meters. Ashford had qualified as expert marksman multiple times in his career. He could hit a man-sized target at 500 meters in ideal conditions. What Bryn Calloway had just done was 3 times that distance, in morning thermals, with crosswinds, against a target she couldn't have seen clearly with the naked eye. "She said 3 rounds, Voss murmured. "That was number 2. She's got 1 left." They waited. The compound held its breath. On 3 ridges, Taliban fighters were trying to locate the source of the shots, trying to figure out how their protected command positions were being eliminated from a range they thought was safe. And on the North Ridge, Bryn Calloway sat motionless, eye pressed to scope, calculating survival for 97 American soldiers she'd never met. The tactical displays showed enemy forces beginning to shift. The organized assault preparations were fracturing. Without clear command structure, without coordination, their 3-to-1 numerical advantage meant nothing. They were a mob now, not an army. All because one woman understood something they didn't. That warfare wasn't about numbers. It was about precision applied at critical moments. Ashford lowered his binoculars and looked at the men and women in his operations center. Looked at soldiers who'd been preparing to die for 72 hours. Looked at faces that were starting to show something they'd lost days ago. Hope. "All stations," Ashford spoke into the radio, his voice carrying to every defensive position in the compound. "Maintain alert status, but I want everyone to understand something. That woman on the North Ridge just changed this fight. She broke their command structure, disrupted their coordination. We're not dead yet." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Colonel Whitmore trained me 28 years ago, taught me that battles aren't won by the side with the most guns. They're won by the side that refuses to accept that impossible means defeated. That woman up there learned from the same man, and she's showing us what refusing to quit looks like." The radio crackled with acknowledgments. Ashford could hear it in their voices. The shift from resignation to determination, from accepting death to demanding survival. On the North Ridge, Bryn Calloway adjusted her scope, calculated wind, measured distance, prepared to fire the third and final round that would either save them all or prove that even the best had limits. And Commander Garrett Ashford realized he'd stopped doubting ghost stories, because sometimes legends walked through impossible circumstances and made them possible through nothing more than skill and will and the absolute refusal to let numbers dictate outcome. The third shot never came, at least not when Commander Garrett Ashford expected it. He stood in the operations center watching the clock tick past 0500, then 0515, then 0530. The sun climbed higher over the Kunar Valley, burning off the morning haze. Taliban positions on 3 ridges remained active, disorganized but still dangerous. And on the North Ridge, Bryn Calloway held her position without firing. "Sir, should we make radio contact?" Lieutenant Kincaid asked. "Check her status?" She said no transmissions, radio discipline. But Ashford felt unease growing in his chest. 2 shots, 2 critical targets eliminated. But she'd said 3 rounds, 3 targets. Where was the third? The answer came at 0548, but not from Bryn's rifle. It came from the ridge itself, as concentrated machine gun fire erupted across the North Observation Post. PKM fire, the distinctive sound of Soviet-era 7.62 millimeter rounds tearing through air at 800 meters per second. The Taliban had finally located their hunter. Now they were trying to kill her. "North Ridge is taking fire," Private Barrett's voice cracked over the radio. "Heavy concentration. They've got her position zeroed." Ashford grabbed his binoculars. Through the optics, he could see the North Ridge position, see dust and concrete fragments erupting as rounds impacted the sandbag walls. Professional fire. Coordinated. 3 separate machine gun positions working together to saturate a single target zone. "Can you see her?" Ashford demanded into the radio. "Negative, sir. Too much dust. Too much incoming. I can't. Wait, I see movement. She's still there." "She's not evacuating." Of course she wasn't evacuating. People like that didn't abandon their post just because the enemy figured out where they were. "Voss, grab medical kit and extra ammunition. We're going up there." "Sir, that's 200 meters of open ground under direct observation. We'll never make it." "Then we better run fast." Ashford grabbed his rifle and moved toward the door. "Because I'm not leaving her up there alone." Master Sergeant Clayton Voss had spent 34 years learning when to follow orders and when to follow the spirit behind orders. He grabbed the medical kit without another word of protest. If the commander was running into hell, then Voss was running beside him. That's what you did after 3 decades in uniform. You didn't leave people behind, ever. They hit the compound perimeter at full sprint. Ashford was 58 years old, and his knees hadn't been right since a parachute malfunction in 2003. But he ran like he was 25 again. Voss matched him stride for stride, both men driven by something older than tactical doctrine or survival instinct. The Taliban saw them immediately. Fire shifted from the North Ridge to the runners. Rounds cracked overhead, snapped past close enough that Ashford felt the pressure waves against his face. One shot hit close enough that dirt exploded against his left shoulder. And for a moment he thought he'd been hit. But he kept running because that's what you did when someone was bleeding alone on a ridge. They reached the north position after what felt like an hour, but was probably 90 seconds. Voss dove behind the concrete barrier first, rifle up, scanning for immediate threats. Ashford followed and immediately saw her. Bryn Calloway sat slumped against the wall, her left hand clamped over her left shoulder. Blood seeped between her fingers, dark and steady. Her rifle lay beside her, still operational. Her face was pale, but her eyes were focused, tracking between the 3 Taliban machine gun positions that were still hammering her location. "Commander," Her voice was strained but controlled. This was stupid idea. Probably. Ashford crawled forward, keeping low as rounds impacted above them. How bad? Through and through. Shoulder. Missed the bone. She winced. I'll live if... Don't bleed out. Voss moved beside her with the medical kit. Ma'am, I need to pack that wound. This is going to hurt. Everything hurts, Sergeant. Do what you need. While Voss worked, Ashford assessed their tactical situation. 3 enemy machine gun positions with clear fields of fire, at least 40 Taliban fighters visible on the surrounding ridges, and they were trapped in a kill zone with no covered route of withdrawal. Can you move? Ashford asked. Can I move? Yes. Bryn gestured toward the scope with her good hand. Should I? No. Still have one target. Field commander. Central observation point. If I leave, they reestablish coordination. 30 minutes. Your QRF is still 5 hours out. You've been hit. You're losing blood. You need medical evacuation, not... Commander. Bryn's eyes locked on his, and Ashford saw something in them that made him stop talking. Not pain, not fear, something older and harder. Whitmore taught me, don't leave the watch. Not when tired, not when scared, not even... She took a breath. Not even when bleeding. Stand until job done, or until can't stand. I can still stand. She tried to prove it by shifting position, but the movement made her gasp. Blood flow increased from the shoulder wound. Voss put pressure on it immediately. Ma'am, you're going into shock. Your hands are shaking. You can't hold a rifle steady enough for a precision shot. Bryn looked at her hands. Voss was right. They trembled with fine tremors, the body's response to trauma and blood loss. She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, something had changed in her expression. Then you'll hold it steady, for me. Ma'am, I don't... You were Whitmore's student, Benning, 92. She met Voss's eyes. Saw your name, training logs, expert marksman, support rifle, long-range shot. Voss looked at Ashford, who saw the same realization dawn on the old sergeant's face. This wasn't about one sniper making an impossible shot anymore. This was about everything Whitmore had ever taught coming together in one moment. All the training, all the students, all the years of passing knowledge from one generation to the next. What do you need? Voss asked quietly. Brace rifle, support weight, I'll handle, scope, trigger control. Bryn's breathing was getting shallower. Commander, need you on radio. Patch through. Landstuhl. Whitmore needs guide this shot. Ashford pulled out the secure satellite phone. It took 2 minutes to establish connection through military channels. 2 minutes while enemy fire continued to hammer their position. 2 minutes while Bryn's blood soaked through the pressure bandage. Then a voice came through the speaker. Weak, labored, but absolutely clear. Calloway, sit rep. Sir. Bryn's voice steadied, hearing her mentor's voice. I'm hit. Shoulder. Lost maybe 20% blood. Shaking. Can't support. Rifle weight. Need you. Walk me through. Silence on the line. Ashford could hear breathing, hear machines beeping in the background. Could imagine Colonel Thaddeus Whitmore lying in a hospital bed in Germany, dying from cancer, listening to his student report she was wounded 12,000 miles away. Target? Whitmore asked. Field commander. Central observation. Range? 1204. Wind shifted. 11 knots. Northeast. Thermals rising. He's mobile. Directing response. Do you have the shot? Not without support. Voss is here. He's going. Brace for me. Another long pause. Then, Clayton Voss, Benning, 92. Good shooter. Little too cautious on windage calls, but solid fundamentals. The voice carried a ghost of humor. Voss, you listening? Yes, sir, Colonel. Voss positioned himself beside Bryn, hands ready to support the rifle. You're going to hold that rifle like your life depends on it, because 97 lives actually do depend on it. Support the stock, take the weight off her shoulder. Let her focus on the scope picture and trigger press. Understand? Yes, sir. Calloway. Whitmore's breathing sounded worse. I need to tell you something. About 3 years ago, Helmand Province, the 17. Bryn's whole body went rigid. Sir, now is exactly the time, because you're about to take a shot while wounded and you need to be right in your head. A cough came through the speaker, wet and painful. Those 17 deaths. That village elder you shot. I never told you the whole story. Ashford saw Bryn's face change, saw years of carefully controlled emotion start to fracture. The intelligence we had, Whitmore continued, it was wrong. But I knew it was wrong. I saw drone footage 30 seconds before you fired. Saw the man was carrying papers, not weapons. I told you to wait, but I didn't tell you to abort. I should have screamed, abort, should have been absolute. Instead, I let you make a decision based on bad information I knew was bad. Sir, you said wait. I didn't. That's on me. No, it's on both of us. I was Overwatch. I had better information. I failed to communicate clearly. Then I lied in the after-action report, said it was my call, said I gave you the green light. Another cough. I let you carry guilt that should have been mine. I did it because I thought it would make you better, sharper, more careful. But all it did was hurt someone I care about. Tears ran down Bryn's face, cutting clean lines through the dust and blood. Why? Telling me this now? Because you're about to take a shot that matters, and I need you to take it free from that weight, free from those faces. They weren't your failure, Bryn. They were mine. And I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry I let you carry that alone. Ashford watched this woman who'd walked through a Taliban siege without showing fear start to break, start to let years of buried grief rise to the surface. And he understood something about Colonel Whitmore's final mission. It wasn't just about saving Forward Operating Base Sentinel. It was about saving Bryn Calloway from the burden she'd been carrying since she was 28 years old. Sir, Bryn's voice shook. If I can, you can, because you're the best student I ever trained, because you have Voss supporting you and Ashford protecting you, because 97 people are counting on you, and because I'm watching through UAV feed right now, and I'll guide every millimeter of that shot. Whitmore's voice softened. But most of all, because I'm giving you a direct order. You are released from guilt. Those faces are my burden, not yours. You're free. Now take that freedom and use it to save those 97 lives. Bryn wiped her face with her good hand, took a shaking breath, looked at Voss and Ashford with eyes that had changed. Not harder, softer, like something that had been clenched tight for 3 years had finally opened. Ready when? You are, ma'am. Voss positioned his hands on the rifle stock. Bryn settled behind the scope. Her left shoulder screamed with pain from the wound, but Voss's support took most of the rifle's weight. She controlled her breathing, slowed her heart rate, let training take over where strength had failed. Her reticle centered on the target. 1,204 meters distant, a man directed Taliban fighters. The field commander who would reorganize their assault if given time. Who would coordinate the attack that would kill everyone Bryn had been sent to protect? I have target, Bryn said quietly. Wind? Whitmore asked. 11 knots, northeast, gusting to 13. Thermals? Rising. Sun's been up 40 minutes, maybe 1.3 meter rise. Target movement? Left to right, approximately 0.7 meters per second. So what's your lead? Bryn calculated. Distance, wind, target movement, her own physical condition, the fact that her hands were shaking and her vision was starting to tunnel from blood loss. Everything that should have been impossible became simple, because Whitmore had taught her that all problems reduce to variables, if you had the right equation. 2.1 mils, lead. 4.8 mils, wind. zero point 0.3 mils, drop compensation, thermals. Check your work. She ran the numbers again, same answer. Confirmed, then take the shot. I'm watching. If you're wrong, I'll tell you. But you're not wrong, Bryn. You never are when it matters. Her finger moved to the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure, maybe less, but something else lifted too. The burden of 3 years, the faces that had haunted her sleep. Not forgotten, never forgotten, but no longer drowning her. For the 97, she whispered. For the 97, Whitmore echoed. Bryn fired. The rifle kicked. The round left at 2,800 feet per second. She watched through the scope as physics and training and 3 years of atonement compressed into 1.7 seconds of flight time. The bullet fought through air and wind and gravity, dropped 2 feet below the bore line, drifted 8 inches from crosswind, covered 1,204 meters while the target moved another meter to the right. Impact. Her scope picture showed the field commander drop, saw the subordinates scatter, saw the careful organization of the Taliban assault dissolve into chaos for the 3rd time in 2 hours. She slumped against the concrete barrier, the rifle suddenly too heavy, even with Voss supporting it. Target down. Confirmed. Whitmore's voice carried something that might have been pride or relief or just exhaustion. 3 targets, 3 rounds, job complete. You did it, Bryn, just like I knew you would. Sir, I need to. I know, and I love you too, kid, like you were my own daughter. Now let these men get you to medical before you bleed out. That's an order from a dying colonel who doesn't have many orders left to give. The connection cut off. Ashford grabbed Bryn as she started to slide sideways, consciousness fading. Voss was already calling for medical evacuation. We need to move her now, Voss said. She's lost too much blood. But before they could lift her, Bryn's hands shot out and grabbed Ashford's arm with surprising strength. Commander, Taliban, they'll try one more push, eastern approach, next 30, tell your people. I'll tell them, you've done enough. No, her eyes fought to focus. Not done until, watch is over. Promise me, you'll hold. Promise, 97 survive. I promise. Now let us get you help. Her grip relaxed. Whitmore's watching. Tell him, finished the job. Then she was unconscious, body finally giving in to trauma and blood loss. Ashford and Voss lifted her carefully and began the dangerous journey back to the compound perimeter. Enemy fire tracked them, but something had changed on the Taliban side. The coordinated professional assault preparation had collapsed. They were firing, but without organization, without the command structure that turned individual fighters into an effective force. 3 shots, 3 commanders eliminated, and suddenly 300 Taliban fighters were just a mob. They reached the medical tent where Doc Sullivan took over, working with the controlled urgency of a man who'd seen too many wounded, but refused to lose any he could save. Corporal Jameson Reed, recovered enough from his own injuries to help, assisted with the blood transfusion. Is she going to make it? Ashford asked. The next 6 hours will tell. She's lost a lot of blood. Shoulder wound isn't life-threatening if we control infection, but she's in shock. Going to be touch and go. Doc Sullivan looked up from his work. Commander, what she did up there, walking through fire while wounded, making those shots, that's not normal human behavior. No, Ashford agreed quietly. That's what happens when someone's been carrying weight for 3 years and finally gets permission to set it down. That's what happens when someone decides 97 lives matter more than one. He left the medical tent and returned to Operations Center. Lieutenant Kincaid met him with updated tactical display. Sir, enemy forces are pulling back, not retreating entirely, but consolidating on defensive positions. The assault preparation has stopped. How long until QRF arrives? 4 hours, maybe less. Sandstorm cleared. They're rolling now. 4 hours. They'd bought 4 hours with 3 bullets and one woman's absolute refusal to quit. Ashford looked at the tactical display, at the red markers that were no longer organized into assault formations, looked at the blue markers representing his 97 soldiers who would live to see tomorrow. All stations, he broadcast, enemy assault is broken. We hold for 4 hours. Anyone who kept count, that's 3 shots from North Ridge. 3 targets eliminated, 3 for 3. That's not luck. That's what happens when someone refuses to accept that impossible means defeated. He paused, thinking about Bryn Calloway lying unconscious in medical. Thinking about Colonel Whitmore watching from a hospital bed in Germany. Thinking about generations of soldiers teaching each other what it meant to protect others. That woman saved every single one of our lives today. When she wakes up, if she wakes up, I want her to know that we held, that we didn't waste what she bought us, that the 97 survived because she refused to let us die. Understood? A chorus of affirmatives came back. Ashford could hear it in their voices. Not just relief, something deeper. Respect. Understanding that they'd witnessed something rare. Someone who embodied what every soldier hoped they would be when the moment required it. Master Sergeant Voss appeared in Operations Center, hands still stained with Bryn's blood. Commander, you should know. Before she passed out, she was talking about someone named Khalid. Said he was dangerous. Syed Whitmore trained him in the 80s. Syed, if he's here, we need to watch for counter-sniper operations. Ashford felt cold settle in his stomach. Did Whitmore train Taliban fighters? Not Taliban, Mujahideen. Back when we were helping them fight the Soviets, 84 to 86, CIA advisors taught them everything we knew about asymmetric warfare, including long-range shooting. Voss pulled up historical intelligence files. Khalid Durrani, age 46, former Mujahideen sniper trained by American advisors. Listed as Taliban fighter since 2001. Confirmed present in this area of operations. The situation suddenly changed. Bryn had eliminated their command structure, but if Khalid was here, if he was hunting, then she'd also drawn the attention of someone who'd been taught by the same man who taught her. A student of Whitmore, just like her, just like Voss, just like Ashford in some ways. Where would a counter-sniper position? Ashford asked. Voss studied the map. Eastern Ridge, 200 meters behind their forward line. Elevated position with clear sight lines to our compound. He'd want range advantage and multiple egress routes. Can we confirm he's there? Not without exposing spotters, but Commander, if he is there, and if he's as good as Bryn thinks, then anyone who goes out on that North Ridge becomes a target. Ashford thought about Bryn lying unconscious, thought about her warning, thought about the fact that she'd mentioned Khalid even while bleeding out, which meant she considered him a critical threat. Double sentries on all observation posts. Anyone with long-range optics watches that Eastern Ridge. If there's a sniper there, I want to know before he takes his first shot. But even as he gave the orders, Ashford knew they were playing defense now. Knew that somewhere on that Eastern Ridge, another student of Colonel Thaddeus Whitmore was calculating ranges and wind speeds and preparing to finish what Bryn had started. The difference was that Bryn had been trying to save lives. Khalid would be trying to take them. Same training, same mentor, opposite purposes. That's what happened when allies became enemies and training became weapons turned against the teachers. In the medical tent, Bryn's eyes flickered open for just a moment, long enough to whisper 2 words before unconsciousness took her again. He's here. Then darkness. And somewhere on the Eastern Ridge, Khalid Durrani settled behind his own scope and began his own calculations. 2 students of a dying colonel who'd spent 40 years teaching people how to stand watch. Now those students would face each other across 1,200 meters of Afghan Valley, and only precision would determine who walked away. The sun climbed higher over Forward Operating Base Sentinel, turning the Kunar Valley into a furnace of light and heat. Commander Garrett Ashford stood at the Operations Center window, Binoculars trained on the eastern ridge where intelligence suggested Khalid Durrani had positioned himself. Somewhere in that maze of rocks and shadows, a man trained by the same mentor who'd trained Bryn Calloway was watching, waiting, calculating. In the medical tent, Doc Sullivan monitored Bryn's vital signs with the focused attention of someone who understood that the difference between life and death often came down to minutes and milliliters. Her blood pressure had stabilized after 2 units of transfusion, but she remained unconscious. The shoulder wound had been cleaned and packed, antibiotics administered, fluids running through an IV line that seemed too small to carry the weight of everything her body needed. "How long until she wakes?" Ashford asked, standing in the tent entrance. "Could be an hour, could be 6. Her body's in shock. It'll wake when it's ready, not before." Doc Sullivan adjusted the IV flow rate. "But Commander, even when she wakes, she won't be combat effective. She's lost too much blood, been through too much trauma. She needs 72 hours minimum before she should even think about—" "Doc," Corporal Jameson Reed spoke quietly from where he sat organizing medical supplies. His own shrapnel wounds had been treated days ago, but he'd stayed in medical, helping however he could. "If there's really a Taliban sniper out there, and if he's hunting, she won't care about 72 hours. She'll care about who dies if she doesn't stop him." Ashford knew Reed was right, knew that people like Bryn didn't calculate their own needs into the equation. They calculated everyone else's survival and worked backward from there. "Keep me updated on any change in her condition." Any change at all. He returned to operations where Lieutenant Kincaid had compiled everything they knew about Khalid Durrani. The file read like a ghost story. Born 1965 in Kunar Province. Recruited by Mujahideen Resistance at age 18. Selected for advanced training by CIA advisors in 1985. Instructor of record, Colonel Thaddeus Whitmore. Confirmed kills during Soviet occupation, 37. SCP, long-range precision fire against Soviet officers and communication assets. Last confirmed contact with American forces, 1989, when Soviet withdrawal was complete and CIA advisors departed Afghanistan. Resurfaced in intelligence reports 2001 as Taliban fighter. Suspected of training other Taliban snipers. Confirmed presence in multiple engagements against coalition forces. Known for patience, discipline, and ability to remain undetected for days while stalking high-value targets. "He's a professional," Master Sergeant Voss said, reading over Ashford's shoulder. "Not militia. Not someone who picked up a rifle last year and learned on the job. Whitmore trained him the same way he trained Bryn, which means he's been watching us for hours, probably days, learning our patterns, identifying our leadership, waiting for the perfect shot." "Then why hasn't he taken it?" Kincaid asked. "Because he's patient. Because rushing is how you miss. And because maybe he knows Bryn is here." Voss looked toward the medical tent. "Think about it. 2 students of the same instructor, both legendary in their own ways. If Khalid knows she's here, this isn't just about completing a mission anymore. This is personal. This is about proving who learned better." Ashford felt the tactical situation crystallize in his mind. They weren't just facing a sniper. They were caught in the middle of a confrontation between 2 people who represented everything Colonel Thaddeus Whitmore had ever taught about warfare. One trying to protect, one trying to destroy, both absolutely certain they were serving the correct cause. "We need to evacuate critical personnel," Ashford decided. "Get them into hardened structures. No unnecessary movement outside until QRF arrives." "Sir, that's 3.5 hours of lockdown. We still need perimeter security, observation posts." "I know what we need, Lieutenant, but I also know that Khalid could be targeting anyone. Any exposed person becomes a casualty waiting to happen. We minimize exposure until we can confirm his position or eliminate him." The radio crackled. "Command, this is North Observation. I have movement on Eastern Ridge. Single individual. Range approximately 1,100 meters." Everyone in operations froze. Ashford grabbed his binoculars and moved to the window. Through the optics, he scanned the eastern ridge methodically, sector by sector, looking for anything that didn't belong. There, a shape that might have been a rock but moved with the wind in ways rocks didn't move. A shadow that seemed too deliberate. A position that offered perfect fields of fire toward the compound. "Can you confirm it's human?" Ashford asked into the radio. "Negative, sir. It's at the edge of positive identification. Could be a person. Could be natural terrain. I'd need thermal optics to confirm." "Do not engage. Do not expose yourself trying to get a better look. Just keep eyes on that position and report any change." Ashford lowered his binoculars and looked at Voss. The old sergeant's face showed the same calculation Ashford was running. If that was Khalid, he was positioned perfectly. Range advantage over most of their weapons, clear sight lines to critical areas of the compound, multiple escape routes through the broken terrain of the ridge. "We need Bryn," Voss said quietly. "She's the only one who can match him at that range. She's unconscious and has lost a quarter of her blood volume. Even if she wakes up, Doc says she won't be combat effective." "Then we better hope she's too stubborn to care what Doc says." As if summoned by the conversation, Doc Sullivan's voice came over the radio. "Command, this is medical. Patient is conscious. Vitals are stable but weak. She's asking for you, Commander." Ashford was moving before the transmission finished. He crossed the compound at a jog, conscious of being in the open, conscious that somewhere 1,100 meters away, a scope might be tracking his movement. He reached the medical tent and found Bryn sitting upright on the cot, one hand pressed against her bandaged shoulder. Her face was pale as bone, but her eyes were focused. "Khalid," she said without preamble. "Eastern Ridge, you've spotted him." "We've spotted something. Can't confirm it's human. It's him. I can feel it." She swung her legs off the cot. Doc Sullivan moved to stop her, but she waved him away with her good hand. "How long until QRF?" 3 hours, 20 minutes. "He'll take shot before then. Probably within next hour." That's what Whitmore would have taught. Wait until target thinks they're safe. Wait until they relax. Then fire. She tried to stand. Her legs buckled immediately. Corporal Reed caught her before she hit the ground. "Ma'am, you need to rest. You're in no condition to..." "To what? Stop someone from killing people I was sent to protect?" Bryn's voice carried an edge that hadn't been there before. Not anger, something colder. "Reed, do you know why I do this?" "Because you're trying to balance those deaths. Because I'm trying to make sure no one else has to carry what I carry." She pushed herself upright again, this time managing to stay standing through sheer force of will. "Khalid will kill someone. Next hour, probably multiple. He'll target leadership or medical or anyone he thinks will cause maximum disruption. And if I'm lying in this tent when it happens, then I'm not anything. I'm just another casualty who gave up." "Bryn," Ashford used her first name deliberately, "you've done enough. You eliminated their command structure, broke their assault, saved 97 lives. No one expects you to. Colonel Whitmore expects me to." She met his eyes. He's watching, through UAV feed, watching his 2 best students face each other. He trained us both, taught us both, don't leave until physically can't stand. Well, I can stand, so I'm standing. Doc Sullivan stepped forward. "Commander, I strongly advise against this. She's not stable. If that wound reopens under stress, she could bleed out in minutes. And her hands are still shaking from blood loss. She can't make precision shots in this condition. Then I'll need support, same as before." Bryn looked at Voss. "Sergeant, you held rifle once. Can you Do it again? Voss studied her face, saw the determination that bordered on obsession, saw someone who'd been given permission to release guilt, but had chosen to keep carrying it anyway because the weight was familiar. Ma'am, if we're doing this, we do it smart. Not from the North Ridge. That position is compromised. Khalid knows about it. He'll be watching it. Voss pulled out a map of the compound. There's a backup observation post, southern edge, built into the wall, lower elevation but different angle. He won't expect fire from there. Range to his position, from there, 1,230 meters, maybe a bit more. Bryn nodded slowly. I can work with that, but I need something first. She looked at Ashford. I need to talk to Whitmore. Need him confirm Khalid's position. Need him tell me what Khalid's thinking. You need him to tell you how to beat someone he also trained. I need him to choose between his students, between the person I am now and the person Khalid became, because one of us isn't walking away. Commander, that's what this has always been building toward. Two students, same training, opposite sides, only precision determines who walks. The satellite phone connection to Landstuhl took 90 seconds to establish. When Whitmore's voice came through, it sounded weaker than before. The cancer was winning, eating away at the man who'd spent 40 years teaching others how to survive. Bryn, you should be unconscious. I should be a lot of things, sir. Right now, I need to be the person who stops Khalid before he kills someone. She paused. Sir, he's here because of you, because you trained him. Now I need you to help me stop him. I need you to choose between your students. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. 15, 20. Finally, Whitmore spoke. Khalid was 20 years old when I met him. 1985. Soviets had occupied Afghanistan for 6 years. He'd lost his father, 2 brothers, and his village to a Spetsnaz raid. He didn't want revenge. He wanted justice. Wanted to protect what was left of his family. I taught him the same things I taught you. Patience, discipline, how to read terrain and wind and human behavior. He was a natural. Best student I had until you came along 20 years later. What happened to him? Bryn asked. Life happened. War happened. The Soviets left and we left, and Afghanistan fell apart. The Mujahideen fractured into warlords, and the warlords became Taliban. Somewhere in that transition, Khalid decided that Americans were the new Soviets, that we were the occupiers, that everything I taught him about protecting his people should be turned against us. Another long pause. He's not wrong about some things. We did arm them and then abandon them. We did turn allies into enemies through policy and politics. But that doesn't change what he's become. It doesn't change that he's pointing a rifle at people I've sworn to protect. So what are you saying, sir? I'm saying I taught you both. I'm proud of you both in different ways. But if I have to choose, I choose the person who's trying to save lives over the one who's trying to take them. I choose you, Bryn, and I'll help you stop him even though it breaks my heart. Bryn closed her eyes briefly, opened them. Tell me how he thinks. Tell me what he'll do. He'll wait until you show yourself. He knows you're wounded, knows you'll have to position defensively. He'll be patient because I taught him that patience wins battles. But he has one weakness I drilled out of you. What weakness? Pride. Khalid always needed to prove he was the best, needed to show he'd mastered everything I taught him. He'll want a difficult shot, a shot that demonstrates superiority. If you give him a target that looks challenging but is actually a trap, he'll take it. You want me to bait him. I want you to be smarter than him. You were always better at thinking 3 moves ahead. Use that. Make him react to you instead of you reacting to him. Whitmore coughed, the sound wet and painful. But Bryn understands something. He's as good as you are, maybe better in some ways. He's had 30 years to refine what I taught him. You've had 8. This isn't a guaranteed victory. This is 2 masters of the same craft facing each other. Someone's going to die. I know, sir. Then make sure it's him, not for me, not for revenge, for the 97 people who need you to win. Another cough. And Bryn, when this is over, when Khalid is down, I need you to promise me something. What, sir? Promise me you'll stop. Stop walking into sieges. Stop carrying debts that aren't yours. Stop being a weapon and start being a person. You've earned that. You've more than earned it. Bryn was quiet for a moment. I'll promise to think about it, sir. That's the best I can do. Then that'll have to be enough. Now go. The UAV feed shows Khalid adjusting his position. He knows you're awake. He knows you're coming. The confrontation is about to begin. The connection ended. Bryn stood, testing her balance. Her shoulders screamed with pain but held. Her legs wanted to buckle, but she locked them. Her hands shook, but she could control them through conscious effort. Not ideal, far from ideal, but enough. It would have to be enough. Southern observation post, she said to Voss. Let's move, before I change my mind, about being able to do this. The journey to the southern post took 5 minutes. 5 minutes of controlled movement through the compound, staying close to walls, using covered approaches, minimizing exposure. Master Sergeant Clayton Voss moved beside her, ready to catch her if she fell, ready to support her weight if needed. Private Sloan Barrett met them at the post. She'd been reassigned there after the North Ridge became too dangerous. Ma'am, I've been watching the Eastern Ridge. Whatever's there, it hasn't moved in 20 minutes. It's moved, you just can't see it. Bryn settled into the firing position. The southern post was cruder than the north, just sandbags and a metal roof, but it had the angle she needed. Khalid is master of micro-movement. He'll reposition in increments so small you can't track, but over 20 minutes, he's probably shifted 6 or 7 times. She set up her rifle, checking zero, confirming scope tracking, running through equipment checks that had become ritual after 8 years of training. Voss positioned himself to provide support. Ashford took position as spotter with a high-powered rangefinder. I need someone to create a target, Bryn said. Something that looks important but is actually expendable. Something that will make Khalid think he has a shot worth taking. What kind of target? Ashford asked. Command personnel, moving between positions. Senior NCO or officer. Someone whose death would cause disruption. She looked at Ashford directly. It needs to be you, Commander, or Lieutenant Kincaid. Someone Khalid will recognize as leadership. You want me to walk into his crosshairs. I want you to make him show himself. Once he fires, he'll reposition. That repositioning will give me 0.7 seconds to acquire him before he's settled. That's my window. Ashford felt his stomach tighten. She was asking him to be bait, to expose himself to a master sniper on the hope that an injured woman could countershoot faster than a professional could reposition. If you miss, I'm dead. If I miss, we're all dead. Because Khalid won't stop with one shot. He'll work down his target list until someone stops him or until QRF arrives. Bryn's eyes held steady on his. Commander, I need you to trust me the way you trusted Colonel Whitmore. Trust that his training wasn't wasted. Trust that I can make the shot that matters. Voss spoke up. Sir, I've seen her work. Seen her eliminate 3 targets while wounded. If she says she can do this, I believe her. Ashford thought about the 97 soldiers under his command. Thought about Corporal Reed, whose wife was 8 months pregnant. Thought about Private Ethan Mercer, who'd never sent that email to his family. Thought about Voss, who was 2 weeks from retirement and 4 grandchildren. All of them alive because Bryn Calloway had refused to quit. What do you need me to do? Walk from operations to medical. Normal pace. Don't hurry. Don't look around nervously. Just walk like you're a commander, checking on wounded. Khalid will have that approach zeroed. He'll have calculated the lead time for moving target. He'll fire somewhere in middle of your walk, and you'll be ready. I'll be ready. Ashford stood, checked his weapon by reflex even though he wouldn't be able to use it against a sniper 1,100 meters away. Looked at the sky, clear and blue and indifferent to the violence about to unfold beneath it. For what it's worth, he said to Bryn, Whitmore was right to send you. You've been everything he said you were. Don't write my eulogy yet, Commander. I'm not dead. I was talking about his eulogy. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, he's dying knowing his legacy survived him. That's something. Ashford climbed down from the southern post and began walking. 50 meters of open ground. 50 meters where every step could be his last. He kept his pace steady, kept his breathing controlled, kept his mind focused on all the small details that made life precious. The way morning light caught on the mountains, the smell of dust and diesel fuel, the sound of soldiers going about the business of survival. In the southern post, Bryn settled behind her scope. Voss supported the rifle, taking weight off her injured shoulder. She could feel her heart rate dropping into the zone where shots were possible. Could feel training taking over from pain and exhaustion. Her reticle tracked the eastern ridge, 1,130 meters. Wind 8 knots from the northeast. Temperature 32 degrees Celsius. Barometric pressure stable. All the variables that turn shooting into applied physics. I have possible position, she said quietly. Rock formation, shaped like broken tooth. Shadow doesn't match. Sun angle, that's him. Confirmed, Voss said, looking through the spotting scope. I see thermal shimmer. Someone's breathing behind those rocks. Ashford walked, 30 meters from operations, 20, 15. Bryn saw it before she heard it, saw the muzzle flash from the eastern ridge, 0.3 seconds before the sound reached them, 0.5 seconds before the bullet would reach Ashford. Down, she screamed into the radio. Ashford dropped flat. The round snapped overhead, missing by 3 feet. Khalid had led the target perfectly for a walking pace, but Ashford's drop had saved him. I have him. Bryn tracked the scope to where the muzzle flash had originated, saw movement, minimal, professional. Khalid repositioning exactly as she'd predicted. 0.7 seconds, that's all she had. She calculated, not just distance and wind and drop. She calculated based on what Whitmore had taught Khalid, the patterns, the doctrine, the way a master sniper would move after a shot, where he would go, how he would shift. She aimed not at where Khalid was. She aimed at where he would be in 0.4 seconds. Firing! The rifle kicked. The scope tracked the target through recoil. She watched her round fly, watched it cover 1,130 meters, watched it drop and drift and fight through air resistance. Impact. The magnified image showed Khalid Durrani jerk backward, saw him slump against the rocks, saw his rifle fall. Target down, Voss confirmed through the spotting scope. No movement. Bryn didn't celebrate, didn't feel victory or relief or satisfaction. She felt what she always felt after a shot, the weight of taking a life. The knowledge that someone who'd been alive was now dead because of precision and trigger pressure and decisions made years before in different conflicts that had led to this moment. Sir, she spoke into the radio, Khalid is eliminated. You can move safely. Ashford stood slowly, checking himself for wounds even though he knew the shot had missed. He looked toward the southern post, toward the woman who just saved his life for the second time in 6 hours. Confirmed kill? he asked. Confirmed. No movement from his position. He's done. But Bryn's voice carried something that made Ashford pause. Not triumph, sadness, deep and profound. The sound of someone who just killed a person trained by the same mentor. A person who might have been an ally in different circumstances. A person who'd become an enemy through the chaos of war and politics and all the ways that history twisted human bonds into weapons. She lowered her cheek from the rifle stock, closed her eyes, let the pain and exhaustion wash over her now that the adrenaline was fading. Colonel Whitmore, are you still on feed? The satellite phone in Ashford's pocket crackled. He pulled it out, activated speaker. Whitmore's voice came through, barely a whisper now. I saw it, saw the shot, saw Khalid fall. I'm sorry, sir, I know. He meant something to you. He did, once, but that was 30 years ago. The man he became wasn't the student I trained. You did what needed doing, Bryn. That's all I can ask. A pause. But now I need you to do something else, something harder. What's that, sir? I need you to forgive me for those 17, for letting you carry guilt that was mine, for making you into a weapon when you should have been allowed to be a person. His breathing was labored. And I need you to forgive yourself. You balanced the debt, 97 saved today, hundreds saved over the years. You're free. Do you understand? You're free. Bryn felt tears running down her face, felt 3 years of weight starting to lift. Not gone, never completely gone, but lighter, manageable. I understand, sir. Good, then this is my last order to you. Stand down, rest, live. Find something beyond sieges and crosshairs and the weight of other people's survival. Promise me. I promise to try, sir. Then that's enough. That's all anyone can do. Try. A long pause. I'm proud of you. Tell Clayton Voss I'm proud of him too. Tell Commander Ashford that his people survived because he trusted when trust was hard. Tell everyone there that they lived because ordinary people chose to do extraordinary things. That's the only legacy that matters. The connection started to break up, static filling the spaces between words. Sir? Bryn called. Sir, are you still there? Nothing, just empty static. Ashford grabbed the phone, tried to re-establish connection. Failed. He looked at his watch. 0943 local time, which meant it was 0143 in Germany. Early morning in Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, where an old colonel had stayed awake through the night, watching his students face each other across an Afghan valley. The phone rang. Different number. Ashford answered. A doctor's voice, professional, sympathetic. Is this Commander Ashford? Yes. Sir, I'm calling about Colonel Thaddeus Whitmore. He passed away approximately 2 minutes ago. Cardiac arrest. We tried to resuscitate, but he'd signed a DNR order. He was watching something on a laptop when he went. Some kind of video feed. He kept saying, "She did it, she's free," over and over. Then he just closed his eyes. Ashford felt the world tilt. Thank you for letting me know, doctor. Sir, he left instructions. He wanted his students to know he was proud, that everything he taught them mattered, that people who stand watch so others can live matter most. Does that mean anything to you? Yes, it means everything. The call ended. Ashford looked up at the southern post, where Bryn Calloway sat motionless, rifle forgotten, staring at nothing. Voss stood beside her with one hand on her good shoulder. Barrett watched from a distance, young enough to not understand the weight, but old enough to recognize grief when she saw it. Ashford climbed to the post, sat down beside Bryn, didn't say anything. Sometimes silence was the only appropriate response to loss. After a long moment, Bryn spoke. He waited, stayed alive, just long enough to see it finished, to see me safe. He saw you free. That's what he wanted most. I killed his student, the first one. Khalid came before me. You stopped someone who was trying to kill 97 people. Ashford looked at the eastern ridge, where Khalid's body lay cooling under the Afghan sun. He made his choices. You made yours. Whitmore understood that. He chose you because you were trying to protect instead of destroy. But now, he's gone. The man who made me into this, who gave me purpose, who showed me how to turn guilt into something useful. Bryn's voice cracked. What do I do now? You do what he ordered. You rest. You live. You find something beyond this. Ashford gestured at the compound, at the valley, at the war that surrounded them. You've been standing watch for 3 years. Someone else can take a turn. The radio crackled. Command, this is Perimeter. QRF is visible on approach road. ETA 15 minutes. Relief. Finally, after 72 hours of siege, after 3 shots and 2 students facing each other, after everything, help was arriving. Ashford stood and broadcast to all stations. QRF inbound. Secure the perimeter. Prepare for relief. As of this moment, Forward Operating Base Sentinel has survived. 0 casualties. 97 souls walking out. Remember that. Remember who made that possible. He looked down at Bryn. You should be in medical. Doc Sullivan will have my head if he finds out I let you engage in combat after losing that much blood. In a minute. I just need a minute. Voss helped her stand. Together they walked back toward medical. 2 soldiers who'd learned from the same instructor supporting each other through grief and exhaustion. Barrett followed at a respectful distance, young eyes watching what valor looked like when stripped of glory and left with just the weight. The QRF rolled into the compound at 1000 hours exactly. 6 armored vehicles and 200 fresh soldiers who'd been racing against time to reach people they thought might already be dead. They found a garrison exhausted but intact, found defensive positions held by people who'd refused to break, found 97 Americans who'd survived because 3 bullets had been placed with mathematical precision. The QRF commander, a lieutenant colonel named Morrison, found Ashford in operations. Commander, battalion sent us expecting to find a massacre. Instead, we find you holding defensive positions like you were never in danger. We had help. Ashford pulled up the tactical logs. 3 shots, 3 enemy commanders eliminated. Khalid Durrani confirmed dead. Assault coordination collapsed. They never got organized enough to make a real push. Who took those shots? Ashford gestured toward medical tent. Woman named Bryn Calloway, trained by Colonel Thaddeus Whitmore. She walked through their siege, positioned herself in a kill zone, and broke their entire operation with precision fire at extended range. Morrison's expression changed. Whitmore. I heard he died this morning. Cancer finally got him. He died watching his students save 97 lives. Died knowing his legacy survived him. Ashford felt the weight of the day settling onto his shoulders. Colonel, I need to file after-action reports. Need to document everything that happened here. But I need you to understand something first. What's that? Bryn Calloway doesn't want recognition, doesn't want medals or commendations. She wants to disappear like she always does after these things. And I'm going to let her, because that's what she earned. The right to walk away without having her face on recruitment posters. Morrison studied Ashford's face. You're asking me to keep a heroic action quiet. That's not how the military works. I'm asking you to honor the wishes of someone who saved 97 Americans without asking for anything in return. Someone who's been carrying weight for 3 years and just got permission to set it down. Don't put it back on her shoulders by making her into something she's not. What is she, Commander, if not a hero? Ashford thought about Bryn settling behind her scope while bleeding, thought about her refusing to evacuate, thought about her promising Whitmore she'd try to be a person instead of a weapon. She's someone who deserves peace. That's what she is. And peace doesn't come from medal ceremonies and publicity. Morrison nodded slowly. I'll keep it quiet. Report will mention sniper support, but no names, no details, just enough to explain how you held. Thank you. 3 days later, Master Sergeant Clayton Voss found Bryn in the medical tent, packing her gear with one arm. The old sergeant had 2 weeks left until retirement, 4 grandchildren waiting, a life beyond war finally within reach. Ma'am, I wanted to say, he stopped, searching for words that mattered. Colonel Whitmore trained me in '92, taught me to shoot, but watching you up there holding that rifle while bleeding, that taught me something he couldn't, that this isn't about the shooting, it's about the staying. Bryn looked at him, 57 years old, 3 decades in uniform, 2 weeks from freedom. You earned your retirement, Sergeant. Go meet those grandchildren. Stand watch for them now. Voss nodded, extended his hand. She took it with her good hand. If you ever stop running, he said quietly, if you ever need a place where people understand, you've got family at Fort Benning, us students of Whitmore. We take care of our own. Thank you, Clayton. He left. Corporal Reed appeared next, looking healthier, ready for his flight home. Ma'am, my daughter was born while I was trapped here. They named her Hope, because that's what you gave us, hope when there wasn't any. Bryn felt something crack in her chest. Give Hope a good life, Corporal. That's all I want. Just give her a world worth protecting. Yes, ma'am. Private Barrett was last. Young, eager, the kind of soldier who'd remember this siege forever. Ma'am, I want to be like you. Want to learn? No. Bryn's voice was firm. You want to be like Voss. You want to serve your time, go home, live. Don't choose this path unless you understand it never ends. Barrett's face fell. Bryn softened. But if you do choose it, if you really choose it, then learn from the best. Fort Benning Sniper School. Ask for instructors who trained under Whitmore. Tell them Bryn Calloway sent you. They'll know what that means. She finished packing, walked out of Forward Operating Base Sentinel for the last time. 3 people stood watching her leave. Voss, Reed, Barrett. 3 witnesses to war learning that saving lives mattered more than taking them. 72 hours later, Bryn Calloway sat in the back of a medical transport heading toward Bagram Airfield. Her shoulder was healing. Her blood count was recovering. Doc Sullivan had cleared her for travel with strict instructions to report to Landstuhl for follow-up care and 3 weeks mandatory rest. She had no intention of following those instructions. Corporal Reed sat across from her, also heading to Bagram for flight home. His wife had gone into labor 2 days ago. He was racing to meet his daughter, who'd been born while her father was trapped in a siege. Ma'am, he said quietly, I never thanked you properly for what you did. My daughter exists in a world where her father is alive because of your shots. Your daughter exists because you survived, because you held the line. All I did was make it easier for you to keep holding. That's not what everyone's saying. They're saying you walked through Taliban lines like a ghost, that you took impossible shots, that Colonel Whitmore sent his best student to save us. Colonel Whitmore is dead. His students are scattered, and ghosts aren't real, Corporal. I'm just someone who learned a skill and used it when needed. Will you keep using it? Keep showing up at bases when things go bad? Bryn looked out the window at the Afghan countryside rolling past. Mountains and valleys and villages where people were trying to survive in the spaces between wars. I don't know. I promised to try being something else. I owe it to Whitmore to try. What would you be if not this? I have no idea. This is all I've been for 3 years, all I've known how to be. She touched her shoulder where the wound was still tender. But maybe that's the point. Maybe Whitmore's last lesson was teaching me that people like me need to know when the watch is done, when to let someone else stand. The transport rolled through Bagram's gates, organized chaos of a major military installation. Helicopters taking off and landing, convoys forming and dispersing, thousands of people engaged in the machinery of war. Bryn grabbed her pack, said goodbye to Reed, wished him luck meeting his daughter. Then she walked through the base toward the transient quarters where she'd stay before her flight to Germany. She never made it to Germany. 15 years later, in the year 2026, Colonel Garrett Ashford stood in front of a classroom at the United States Army Sniper School, Fort Benning, Georgia. He was 73 years old, retired from active duty but teaching part-time because sitting still had never suited him. The class consisted of 35 students, 31 men, 4 women, all of them eager, all of them thinking they understood what it meant to be a sniper. None of them really understanding until they'd pulled trigger on another human being and lived with what came after. Today we're discussing siege doctrine, Ashford began. Specifically, the defense of Forward Operating Base Sentinel, September 2011. Anyone familiar with the engagement? Silence. Too long ago for most of these students. Ancient history from wars they'd learned about in school, but never experienced. Sentinel was under siege for 72 hours, 300 Taliban fighters versus 97 American soldiers. 3-to-1 numerical disadvantage, limited ammunition, no air support due to weather, QRF delayed. By all tactical calculations, Sentinel should have fallen. He pulled up tactical maps on the screen. Instead, 0 casualties, complete defensive success. Enemy assault coordination collapsed. How? A female cadet raised her hand, 24 years old, sharp eyes. Sir, the after-action report mentions sniper support, extended range precision fire, but no details, no names. That's right, Cadet Morrison, no names, but I was there. I commanded Sentinel, and I can tell you exactly what happened. Ashford pulled up a single photograph, grainy, taken from distance, a figure behind a rifle, face obscured. This is Bryn Calloway, trained by Colonel Thaddeus Whitmore. She walked through a Taliban siege and eliminated 3 enemy commanders with 3 shots. Average range 1,200 meters, all in adverse conditions. The classroom buzzed with whispers. Morrison spoke up. Sir, that's not possible. 3 for 3 at that range in combat conditions. No one's that good. No one should be that good. But she was. Because she'd been trained by the best instructor the Army ever produced. Because she'd been practicing one thing for 6 years. And because she was carrying weight that made missing unacceptable. What weight, sir? Ashford hesitated, wondered how much to share, then decided that truth served better than mythology. 3 years before Sentinel, she'd made a mistake, shot the wrong target. 17 innocent people died as a result. She'd been trying to balance that ever since, saving lives to compensate for the ones she took. Sir, that wasn't her fault. Bad intelligence happens. That's what everyone told her. She didn't accept it. Colonel Whitmore didn't let her accept it. He made her carry those names. Made her understand that being a sniper means you own every shot. Good and bad. Righteous and wrong. Morrison pressed, Sir, where is Instructor Calloway now? Why isn't she teaching here? I don't know. She disappeared after Sentinel. Refused medals. Refused recognition. Just vanished, like she always did. Ashford pulled up more tactical data. But I've heard stories over the years. Other bases. Other sieges. Always the same pattern. Someone appears, takes impossible shots, saves people, disappears before anyone can thank them properly. He clicked through locations. Firebase Omega, Syria, 2013. Embassy Extraction, Yemen, 2017. Training Base Fire, Jordan, 2021. Refugee Camp, Uganda, 2024. Always the same signature, long-range precision, 0 casualties, mystery shooter. You think it's the same person? I think some people can't stop even when they try. I think Bryn Calloway promised Colonel Whitmore she'd rest. But I think she's still out there, because that's what happens when you find your calling. It doesn't end just because someone tells you it should. Ashford's phone buzzed. Unknown number, text message. He opened it while the class discussed the Sentinel siege among themselves. The message read, "Saw your lecture online. You got one detail wrong. Whitmore didn't train me to shoot people. He trained me to protect people. Huge difference. Still protecting, still learning what that means without carrying faces that don't belong to me anymore. Thank you for keeping my name out of reports. Thank you for letting me be a person instead of a legend. And thank you for holding Sentinel until I could do my job. You're the reason those 97 survived as much as I am. BC." Ashford stared at the message, felt 15 years compress into seconds. He typed back quickly, "Where are you?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, probably a burner phone purchased for this one message and already destroyed. He looked up at his class, young faces full of eagerness and confidence, none of them understanding yet what it would cost to be truly good at this, what it would cost to carry the weight. "Listen carefully," Ashford said, and the room went quiet. "You're here to learn how to shoot. I can teach you that. Win calls and drop compensation and range estimation. But I can't teach you the hard part. I can't teach you how to live with taking another person's life. That's something you figure out on your own, or it breaks you." He gestured at the photograph of Bryn on the screen. She figured it out by turning guilt into purpose, by making every shot after her mistake count for something, by protecting people instead of just eliminating targets. That's the difference. Killers take lives, protectors save them. Sometimes that protection requires killing, but it's never about the killing. It's all for showing 97 people what it looks like when someone refuses to quit. And I'd tell her that Colonel Whitmore was right. She earned her freedom. She earned the right to stop carrying weight. But if she chooses to keep going anyway, if she chooses to keep standing watch, then I'm grateful someone like her exists in the world. He paused. Because people like that are rare. People who walk through fire to protect strangers. People who'll take impossible shots while wounded. People who understand that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being terrified and doing the job anyway because someone has to. The class was silent. Ashford let the moment breathe. Let them sit with the weight of what he was describing. "Class dismissed. Read the Sentinel after-action report before next session. Pay attention to what's not said as much as what is said. Sometimes the spaces between words tell the more important story." The students filed out. Morrison lingered. "Sir, if that happens, don't ask their name. Don't try to thank them. Just survive. That's what they want. That's all they want." Morrison left. Ashford stood alone in the classroom, looking at the photograph of Bryn Calloway. 15 years old now. Grainy and distant, but still showing everything that mattered. Someone behind a rifle, someone in a kill zone, someone standing watch so others didn't have to. His phone buzzed again. Different number, this time a voicemail. He played it. Colonel Whitmore's voice. Recorded years ago. Must have been programmed to send on the anniversary of his death. "Garrett, if you're hearing this, it means I've been gone 15 years. Long enough for perspective. Long enough to understand what mattered. The students I trained were my legacy. Not the missions, not the kills, not the wars. You. People I helped become better versions of yourselves. That's what teaching is. Passing something forward. Making sure the watch continues. Tell Bryn I'm proud. Tell her she was always free. Tell her being who she is was her choice, not my burden. And tell her when she's ready to stop, when she's finally ready to rest, that's okay too. People who stand watch deserve peace. Love you, son." The message ended. Ashford saved it. Wouldn't delete it. Couldn't delete it. It was Whitmore's voice reaching across 15 years to remind him of lessons that never expired. Somewhere in the world, Bryn Calloway was standing watch. Somewhere that standing watch mattered. That sometimes one person with a rifle and absolute commitment could change everything. That night, in a different part of the world, in a place where conflict simmered and violence waited, A woman adjusted her scope. Her shoulder carried a scar from 15 years ago. Her hands were steady despite age and injury. Her eyes tracked movement with the precision that came from a decade and a half of practice. 83 people needed protecting. And she'd realized something that Whitmore hadn't understood when he gave that final order. People like her didn't stop because someone told them to. They stopped when there was no one left to protect, when the world was safe, when the watch was over. The world wasn't safe. The watch wasn't over. She fired. The bullet flew true. 1,150 meters through mountain air, through wind and heat and all the variables that turn shooting into applied physics. It found its target. The kind of shooting that people would call impossible if they knew it had happened. When it was done, when all 4 targets were eliminated and the immediate threat was neutralized, Bryn Calloway packed her rifle, gathered her equipment, prepared to disappear the way she always did. Before recognition, before gratitude, before anyone could turn her into something she wasn't. She was someone who'd learned a skill and used it where needed. Someone who stood watch, who protected, who served, who made the hard shots and carried the weight so others didn't have to. That was the legacy. That was what mattered. Not balance, not atonement, just purpose, service. The eternal watch that some people kept because someone had to keep it, because the world needed protecting, because love in its highest form meant standing between danger and those you loved, even if those you loved never knew your name. She disappeared into the night, ready for the next mission, ready to stand watch again, ready to be exactly what Whitmore had trained her to be, forever, until the end.